We are live.
Beautiful. So welcome everyone to the Opportunity Collaboration Catalyst Guide call. We are so thrilled that all of you and many more who could not be on the call with us today are going to be lending your voice and helping to convene incredible diversity of sessions this year at Opportunity Collaboration. My name is Avery Kent. I'm the Executive Director of conveners.org, and I am here to support all of you today in terms of addressing any questions and ensuring that everybody is aligned in terms of how to best show up as a catalyst, how to ensure that we are staying true to the Opportunity Collaboration values and principles. And so I am going to do kind of a quick walkthrough of the Catalyst Guide that you all received. But this is really also an opportunity to answer your questions. If you prefer, you can type them into chat. I've got the chat window open now, or feel free to just kind of raise your hand if you're on video, and we'll make sure to pause and welcome you in. Or feel free to just jump on and ask your question. But this is really about you and ensuring that you have what you need to be as successful as possible. So with that, Topher, did you have anything you wanted to add before we kicked off?
No, just a note of gratitude for all of you for helping lead Opportunity Collaborations this year. It's an incredible, Joy and I are finalizing the agenda now. We took it to the printers yesterday. And it was just such an exciting process to sort of see it in its entirety, or in terms of who you all are, what you're bringing to the table, your expertise, your wisdom, and your questions.
Thank you all.
Are we going to do an introduction? Because some people dialed in.
So honestly, we have about 50 participants on the call right now.
So you're just going to assume everybody's on. Okay, fair enough.
Exactly. But thank you so much for asking. Great. So you all have your Catalyst Guide. So I wanted to kind of start with some of the key high-level overviews that we think are really important for setting up your sessions for success. For those of you who are familiar with open space technology or the unconference model, one of the core principles is that whoever's in the room are the right people. And OC really takes this to heart. So sessions are not hard and fast. We're not going to shut the door and keep people in or not allow people to join late. So as a catalyst, being receptive and understanding that sessions are on a first-come, first-served basis to delegates. People will come and go. Some might be packed, some might be empty. But whoever shows up for your conversation are the people who are most into that conversation and therefore the right people to have in the room. And so we hope that in each session you do have a chance to talk up your session on site, get some excitement, use those mailboxes. It can be really great to send folks a little handwritten note if you think that they could have a lot to contribute to your topic. And encourage folks to show up a little early so that they have a place to sit and you can really get started on time. All sessions do occur in a circle of chairs configuration. This is really important. We're not doing theater style. This is not about lectures. This is about you catalyzing group conversation. So being that agent that enables people to connect with one another around the topics that you've brought to the forefront. There will be some materials available to you. You'll have easels, you'll have pens, you'll have paper, you'll have flip charts and flip chart markers. We encourage people to take visual notes during sessions. And if you want to use those for anything following, definitely take a photo. That can make it a lot easier than having to carry a big piece of paper around. There is no electronics, no PowerPoint, no showing a video, no showing a presentation as part of these sessions. And that is very much to keep us mindful and aligned with the ethos of the Opportunity Collaboration Delegation. We do have a question here from Carol about will there be flip charts available at the cluster forks? There have not been those available in the past because they are usually outside and around the dinner tables. Topher, is there kind of any wiggle room on that?
Well, we do host the cluster forks in a restaurant dining space. There's a lot of people mulling around, serving the meals from a med staff perspective, people getting up and moving their chairs around. I suppose if it's absolutely necessary, we could do that, but I would prefer that we refrain.
And for those who are new to Opportunity Collaboration, the cluster forks are a conversation over a meal. And they're really aligned with this idea that breaking bread together is a very potent tool for encouraging conversation on a different level and really helping people form connections. Like Topher said, it is in a dining hall. There are other conversations happening, so kind of being mindful of that. I know in the past for me at a cluster fork, one of the really powerful things that I hosted that I think was maybe unexpected was it was a very popular topic, like an entire second rung of people had formed around the edge. Some of you are nodding your heads, this happens. They actually encouraged that group to go to a new table and just kind of appointed somebody else from the group who knew enough about the topic to ask some potent questions. And that way we ensured that everybody was able to really participate in the dialogue. So that's just another kind of technique around cluster forks. Jackson raised a question here of how long should one wait in a room if no one shows up? Topher, do you have experience with that? I haven't actually run into that myself at OC.
Yeah, I think there has been one or two cases of that in the past. Part of the beauty of Opportunity Collaboration is that all of these sessions are available first come, first serve. And so, if folks are attending a separate session because there happens to be overlap with the one that you're hosting and otherwise want to attend both, it is possible that you can join that other session if you have no one at yours. And it's simply one of those issues where there's a lot of very interesting topics on the agenda. So at some level, we have to just assume that the most important conversations will happen naturally.
Worst comes to worst, go get in the ocean. You're guaranteed to have a fantastic conversation floating around there. So a really kind of critical piece that I wanted to lead with is that in the spirit of OC, we really encourage you to lead with a potent question. And what that means is a potent question is one that's not just about extracting information from people or getting them to give up something to you. A potent question is one that encourages them to start thinking critically, or thinking about an issue through a new angle that maybe they've never considered before. And so, you'll see from the readings that Kaya has recommended for all delegates this year that there's a real theme about unheard voices. How do we ensure that we are engaging people, whether that's leadership from the Global South, workers, introverts, who are the people who typically don't get a place at the table or don't get a chance to speak up? And so as a catalyst, we are asking you to embody that with your sessions and to really encourage people to share their experience and create space for everyone in the room to have a chance to share. A few techniques for this that can help. One is round robin. So going from person to person in a circle and ensuring that everyone in the circle has a chance to share their perspective or point of view. Another is think, pair, square. So you ask a really potent question. You ask people to pair up with somebody that they don't already know. They discuss their answers together. You can either then have them share back with the room what their partner said, so it kind of practices really active listening, or you can then have that pair go find another pair, and that's the square part. You group in a group of four and continue talking about the topic. Another technique is what we call step up, step back. And this is the framing that we can use at the beginning of a session that helps people self-moderate. So the idea is that if you are somebody who typically steps up, you're the first to answer, you answer frequently, you want to have the last word, encouraging that person to take a step back and practice reflective for a while before contributing. And the flip side of that is if you're somebody who usually steps back and sort of waits until everybody else has had a chance to share their opinion or their before you talk, we invite you to actively step up and share earlier in the dialogue. So those are just a couple of techniques, and I'll be on site all week as well. If you want a chance to just chat about other styles that you want to try out, I'm really happy to be available to support you. So another piece is that essentially being candid about your agenda. If you are setting the stage for a conversation that is about really setting off some action or follow through that you expect of the group, it's not just about having an interesting conversation, name that. Don't let it be a hidden agenda that maybe surprises people halfway through or near the end. Name it up front that that's something that you're hoping to get out of this, and this is why you convened this conversation. Yes, so Thomas has asked a question of, will we all have name tags? Yes, we will have name tags. We'll have your first name very big. We won't have your organization on them. This is really about us showing up as our whole selves and not just the organizations we represent. The other piece about the discussion is essentially being open to tangents. You may have some predetermined notion of where you want a conversation to go, but if the energy in the room is different, if people are actually sparked around something else, holding space for those tangents is a really important piece of being a catalyst. You can't always predict where people are going to go, and that's part of the value and the thrill of having all these great new people in the room. Brandy has asked, do you recommend games? I personally love games, but they're a risk. They are absolutely a risk. So if you have had experience with a game in the past and it's worked well for you, I definitely recommend trying again. If you're going to try a new game you haven't tried before, just say that. I have found the OC community to be incredibly safe and forgiving if somebody owns that they're trying a new experiment. And so if you want to test something new with this group, I think that works great so long as you name it and you say that that's something that you want to try out with folks and ask for their feedback from it. What worked, what didn't? And that helps give them a sense of agency and participation in the experience. I know for some of you, if you've got a session that's coming up at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon, folks might be hitting that afternoon sugar coma, or maybe later in the day when people are getting tired. Having some physical activity can really help. Rockstar Paper Scissors is one of my favorite games for that. It's essentially everybody does rock, paper, scissors, and when you lose, you chant the person's name, like, go Kelly, go Kelly, go Kelly. And it's a great way for the folks in the room to learn one another's names. And it's over in less than 5 minutes, no matter how many people you have. So it's that can be just another technique, or stretching, asking people to do some breathing, whatever works for you and your style. The diversity of styles is really what makes this so successful. I want to take a second to also point out how you want people to follow up. Naming that up front is really important. So if there's somebody taking notes who is going to actually track actions that people commit to, or whether there's going to be an email follow-up, or whether or not you actually want people to sign up on a list that they're going to stay involved in this group. If follow-through is part of what you want to achieve, then kind of leading with this is how we're going to ensure that happens will help keep everybody bought in. Kathleen mentions the question of, are we supposed to have action items? Not necessarily. Sometimes the session is just about digging in on a really interesting topic and taking advantage of the incredible minds that we have all brought together in Mexico. So if action items aren't a part of it, fantastic. Then disregard my previous advice. Mary asks, do you get to explain your program to the delegates? Mary, can you elaborate on that a little bit more about what you mean?
Because I'm working on employability, do I get to explain where that is coming from before we start the conversation?
Right.
Thank you for that clarification. So sometimes that context is really helpful in terms of setting the stage and making sure people kind of understand why you raised this topic. what I tend to recommend is starting with a potent question that gets people thinking about the topic, and then kind of transitioning into, here's why I raised this issue, coming from this place. But be very careful not to enter the realm of pitching, that this isn't about you getting to stand up and everybody to give you money, that this isn't about kind of bringing people on, on board with that. Raising awareness is absolutely fantastic. Providing context is fantastic, but it is a fine line, and it is important to be mindful of that. Do you have any other advice or thoughts about that you'd like to share?
Avery, you're muted.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Yeah, Jackson has a great piece of advice here. Keep it short and learn from others as much as you can. Kathleen asks if everyone on this call is new to the OC. I know that's not true because I see familiar faces, but Topher, do you know what the mix is?
Not exactly on this call. I do know that for OC in general, there's about 40.
One second, Topher. Jorian, can you please mute your microphone because you're getting an echo from Topher?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
Jorian. So yeah, in OC in general, it's about 40% return rate for individuals in terms of people who have been to the Opportunity Collaboration at least once before. And then if you look at it organizationally, it's about 60, maybe 65% in terms of organizations saying different representatives year over year.
Thank you, Topher. So top 3 do's and don'ts. So, one of these is around make sure to facilitate and moderate the dialogue amongst delegates. Don't be a talking head or make this about a presentation to the group. Some techniques that can help you to do that. In my experience, a good facilitator is one who isn't afraid to challenge people, and maybe ask a question that is a little sensitive in nature. It also, a good facilitator reflects back to the group. Sorry, I'm going to ask if someone's on the phone, if you wouldn't mind muting. Thank you so much. So yeah, just making sure that you feel comfortable calling out that what the objective is, reflecting back to people what you're hearing, kind of summarizing, and inviting people to speak. One way I've seen that done is, let's say you had a great conversation with somebody before OC or earlier that day. You can kind of bring up their comment. Oh, Carol, when we talked last, you mentioned this. Would you mind sharing that with the group and speaking to that further? And that kind of really personal invitation and naming someone, making sure that it is a conversation you've had before so they don't feel like you just cold called them in the middle of the room, that can really help invite the dialogue. Another tactic is to actually have some plans for the audience. So if you know that there's certain people who will be in your session, asking them beforehand to think about a certain question so that when they get in the room, they already feel primed to jump off and lead their answer. That can help to make sure that the questions are all on a silent room. Yes, I am going to call out the person on phone number 603-436-3826. If you please could mute, we are getting some wind and feedback. Thank you. So another technique is actually silent reflection. Either bring some index cards or using some of the notepads that are provided by the hotel to ask a question and give people a chance, a minute or two, to actually think about their response and write it down before asking them to speak verbally. This is another technique that can really benefit introverts in your community and really give them the time to process. Another piece is making sure to plan ahead and really envisioning what a successful conversation will look like. If you have a clear sense of purpose, if you have a clear sense of the outcomes that you want, if you know what process you're going to use, then it's going to go great. It's going to be really smooth. If you try to kind of wing it when you arrive, doesn't mean you won't have a good conversation, but I think setting yourself up for success in terms of planning ahead is a really helpful best practice. Another piece is managing time. So you can either ask somebody from your group to be a timekeeper if you need that support. Otherwise, just making sure you're keeping track of the time, and that when you are, 10 to 5 minutes before the session is supposed to end, using that to really start synthesizing, reflecting, kind of bringing things to a close. If you do have action items, using that as a time to kind of get agreement about what those action items are going to be. I think that those really help. Thomas has also asked the question, will there be session-specific feedback forms? And so far, I actually don't know the answer.
Session-specific to what? Sorry, I missed that.
Session-specific feedback forms.
Oh, no, not in particular, no. So we send out a survey after OC that's very general about the overarching experience. And we often ask, like, in terms of the individual conversations we have with folks after OC, which sessions did they like, which ones were effective, that kind of thing. But there's no formal survey specifically for each session.
But that doesn't mean that you can't bring your own, right, Topher? Like,
correct.
If you are looking for feedback, feel free to bring that as a resource and to share that with the participants in your session. So a few other kind of best practices and values that we want to keep in mind is aim high. One of the beautiful things about OC is that everyone there is committed to combating poverty. And so because we already start with this shared sense of values, everyone there is a veteran, they're a leader, they have their own stories to tell. And so they really appreciate honest and engaging questions, and they appreciate really getting deep and talking about certain things that maybe you can't talk about in other settings, because this is truly a safe space. So I think honoring that and kind of recognizing that when you're planning your session can help a lot. Another part is be tangible. So for example, if you're doing a session and you need, it helps to have some specific figures, specific studies, specific articles that you're referencing, jot those down, make sure you have those in your personal notes before you start your session, so that you're not just going off the cuff in that regard. Try to avoid jargon. Try to speak clearly. One thing I've seen that's been really helpful is actually inviting participants. If you hear a word that you don't necessarily understand or that you want to unpack, we welcome you to call that out when that word is said. And keeping in mind that people come to OC from many different countries, many different cultures, many different backgrounds and experiences. So certain words that don't even necessarily feel like jargon could actually be very loaded terms for others. So inviting your participants to be able to call that out for them will ensure that everyone's on the same page. And so with that, there's a few more here, just being authentic, don't holding back, keeping your stories short, kind of keeping your ego in check. But with that, we're a little before the halfway point, so I want to stop talking. And I want to ask those of you who are returning delegates and who have led your own sessions in the past to share your stories with the group. What have you found that worked really well or maybe didn't work at all and folks should avoid and learn from?
This is Kat, and I led, I think it was a cluster fork lunch that had another circle outside. So I can take no credit for this, but one thing that made that work well was that a veteran delegate almost took the role of a co-facilitator with me. Maybe that's also an example for those who haven't gone before of how helpful your fellow delegates can be.
Thank you for sharing, Kat.
Hi, this is Mitra. One thing I found really helpful, having a co-facilitator who had somewhat different opinions from myself, and therefore the contrast between us got everybody talking.
That's great, thanks, Mitra. I also want to call out Kathleen's question here. Are cluster fork conversations spontaneous or planned and organized? Topher, my understanding is that they're organized and actually listed in the agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, they're all on the online agenda right now, and then everyone will receive a hard copy version of that agenda when we arrive on site. So there's about 8 conversations per lunch and per dinner every day, which are the cluster forks. And those have been assigned for some time now, so you can always go through and peruse those online, and then, of course, look at those when we're on site together as well.
If you are looking to host a spontaneous conversation, or there's something that comes up for you on site, we are going to be having a true unconference on Thursday, where the session topics are sourced on site at OC. So there is a container for you if you want to have space for talking about a topic and didn't necessarily sign up yet. Others who've had experience, maybe specifically about cluster forks, because I think that, Natalie actually just asked this as well. There are a lot of techniques for cluster forks specifically that come up, because it is sometimes crowded, you're outside, it's around a dinner table. For those of you who have led those in the past, would you mind sharing what's worked and not for you?
Avery, this is Devin. I hosted a cluster fork dinner session, and there are definitely challenges, but I think some people spoke to having the diversity, or the conversation being amped up at that hour. And it can be difficult, but what really helped me was putting notes in people's mailboxes who I think would be interested in the topic I was talking on, and inviting them to the conversation and saying, hey, I really want to make sure you can be here. We really want to hear your voice, and getting that diversity of voices and attendance around the table.
That's great. Thank you, Devin.
Avery, let me chime in on this double ring phenomenon too. Cluster forks by design are supposed to be intimate conversations. We put 12 seats around a table, 12 chairs. Lo and behold, with sessions that are very popular, you can see people sort of forming around the edges. My suggestion has always been to try and encourage to show up who may not be able to have one of those 12 seats, that they simply follow up with you later, that they ping you and make sure that they schedule some time to find out what was the content of that conversation, what were some big takeaways, were there folks in that session that they may need to talk to themselves, etc. So it's not like we need to necessarily police the 12 chairs. We're not going to sort of force people to leave. But at the same time, that if you can offer that as a suggestion, it may help keep those conversations more intimate.
I mean, 2 other suggestions on that is I intentionally this time around have 2 other facilitators. So one of us can break off, and we plan that ahead. The other is, and it depends on how individuals want to spend their time. But if it's a conversation I'm really interested in, I'm also willing to say, look, we want to keep this intimate, but let me know if you want to have this conversation with another group of folks, and then I would be happy to facilitate a second cluster fork with a new set of people.
Also, I've done a couple of cluster forks, and I just want to caution everyone that not to be surprised. It's very fluid. It's not like being in a room. So people are coming and going through the whole thing, and so don't anticipate that you're going to have a very linear discussion, because you're going to have people constantly joining. And I know the first time I did it, I kept going back and trying to recap everything, and so not to get caught up in that, and just welcome people, and they just have to catch up.
I think this is Diane. I think another thing that's very helpful is not to spend a majority of your time in introductions, because what very often happens is that people, you ask the question, who are you? Where are you from? Why are you interested in this session? And then next thing you know, more than half of your time is up. So to be creative about how you invite people into the conversation, but to do it expeditiously.
There is a question about the clinics. Before we move on to that, I want to make sure that if anyone else has something to share around the cluster forks, that we have a chance to close out that topic. Great. So, so the clinics are a different format. They are not over a meal. They're in a room. It is still a circle of chairs, but no table. And in terms of the different expectations, I think to Robin's point, folks are less likely to be popping up and down because like they're going to refill their plate or get another drink. Like that element is removed. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to leave halfway through because there's actually another thing that they want to be checking out as well. Right? So that fluidity, I think, is still a piece of this. For those of you who have led clinics in the past, would you mind sharing what's worked for you or what hasn't? Okay, I'll take silence as a sign that nobody has anything to share on that specific topic. So with that, are there other questions that people have?
Avery, let me just hone in on the clinics one last comment. By design, you guys, the capacity building clinics are a chance for delegates to teach other delegates something. It's a chance to share an expertise or a knowledge base, or it's a bit more didactic in nature as compared to the cluster forks or even the conversations for change. So we still want it to be interactive. We still want all the participants in those conversations to contribute. But as somebody who's leading a clinic, supposedly you've told us that you've got something that you really think other delegates would benefit from knowing about, and you're there to help convey whatever that may be.
So that is a case where it is more of being a teacher. Great. Are there other questions, especially for those of you who are there for the first time?
Can I interrupt? I don't even know if I'm being heard because I'm on the phone and not on the internet. But I would the metaphor about teacher, I think, might be a little inappropriate in the sense that we're not the model. The most, I think, effective and impactful model is that we're sharing expertise, but I think it's really important that that there is a sense of using whatever we're sharing as an entry point into delegates learning and sharing. So in my experience, the clinics that are most well received are those where there is a real commitment to dialogue with the people who show up in the clinic, and that whatever we're sharing is an entry point for conversation and not a lecture.
Diane, thank you so much.
Around teacher, it's not about a lecture. It's about that what our experience or case study or whatever we're sharing is the entry point to have a conversation about that particular topic.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for modeling this idea of you should create an environment where people can call out specific uses of language. Right? Language is a very powerful tool. And I say the word teacher because that what you described, Diane, is actually the style I use as a teacher. It's very much about that dialogue. But for many others, that would have that connotation of lecturer. And so thank you for calling that out, because I did not intend to convey that connotation of a lecturer.
And can I make another point that actually those that many of us have experienced is in the clinic to really establish or share guidelines about how you want people to engage in the conversation. Because I think that also helps set the container related to who's going to speak, how, like, that making sure that no one dominates the conversation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So having some way of having guidelines or group agreements about how the clinic is going to be, how it's going to be used, and to set up expectations is also very helpful.
And Diane, do you or others have some examples of what those what really successful agreements have looked like in terms of that participation?
I'm pausing to let others speak.
Hi, this is Monica. I have a great list of agreements that we use with Alternatives to Violence Project that are very inclusive, and it actually works on affirmations and really making sure that creativity abounds and everybody gets a chance to speak. So I can share those somehow. Not sure where.
Topher, maybe we could share that when we send the video out. So Monica, if you could send that to Topher and I, we can include that as a resource when we share the video link.
Okay, no problem.
And that way it'll also go to those who are unable to join the call today as well.
Perfect.
Another agreement that I've seen successful is yes and. Trying to help people move away from immediately rejecting another person's idea, which can really shut down a conversation. Are there others that folks have practiced before?
This is Victoria. One that I really enjoy is step up and step back. You establish in the very beginning of a meeting that the people who are quieter are under a loose obligation to step up if they feel the urge, and then talk a lot should step back and allow other people to speak.
And I have two that have been particularly helpful. One, which is to speak from our own personal experience and use I statements. And the second one is to participate with the intention of moving the conversation or dialogue forward. So folks are invited to always be mindful of, is what I'm going to share, is it going to move to further understanding and move what we're talking about further.
Beautiful, thank you. And thank you again, Monica, for being willing to share your resource with the group. Especially for those of you for whom it's your first time, or for returning delegates, are there any anxieties that you have? Is there anywhere where you're a little nervous, and maybe we can help support you and ensure that you feel comfortable and really well prepared for your session?
Well, I was going to ask, this is Kathleen from Global Workers. So it does seem that there's a lot of experience out there, and it's hard to kind of get a grip on it for someone that's new, but we're having some sort of mentoring session. So maybe, to understand all the differences between forks and, to sort through it all and what it means and what exactly, I don't know. I think it's hard. It's very hard to understand the big picture because so many people are involved with so much experience. It's like second nature for them. So it feels like you need to go through it once to kind of understand it before you can really impactfully participate. But hopefully I'm wrong about that, or the mentor conversation that I'll be having with my group next week will help fill in some of those things and try to figure out how to access the website and spending more time there too might help. So there's a comment. I don't know if others felt that way or they just felt like they were really up to speed and understood exactly what they were doing, and they arrived in Cancun and it was great. Or other people felt a little disoriented until they got into the OC Kool-Aid and understood exactly what was going on.
Topher, do you mind taking that one and sharing a little bit about kind of each type of session and what the intention is?
Sure, happy to, Avery. First of all, there is what we call a guide program for everyone coming into the OC for the first time. So as a new participant, as a new delegate, you should have been linked up to a guide, somebody who's been there before, somebody who can be a sounding board for you, somebody who can answer a lot of these questions and hopefully ease any anxiety that you may have. So first to do there, if I could suggest a piece of advice would be to make sure you talk to your guide about that and share any nervousness or anxiety you have with them, and hopefully they can help alleviate some of that right off the bat, even before you arrive. And in terms of all the sessions, so I guess it's important to note, we haven't even really talked about this part yet. There's the colloquium that starts in the morning every day. And this is the session where you're assigned to a small group, you're assigned to a moderator. You normally wouldn't even talk about your professional role, your title, the organization you're affiliated with. Instead, it's very personal. So just going through this whole gamut of the agenda, that's what kicks off every day at OC. And then there are the lunch cluster forks. And as we've talked about, there's about 8 of those happening simultaneously. They're usually about an hour and a half long, hosted by 1 or 2 delegates, tend to be along the lines of what a individual organization is doing, or a challenge they're facing, or an opportunity they have to expand or scale. And then from 3 to 5 every day are both conversations for change and capacity building clinics. We've talked about the capacity building clinics as being a chance to sort of build capacity of one another, not to be the teacher necessarily, but to hold a conversation where people gain knowledge, they gain expertise. Conversations for change, by contrast, are a little bit higher level in nature. They tend to be along the lines of what's happening in the sector, what's the state of the field, what are some policies we should be paying attention to, big trends, new solutions that pertain to a number of us. And then the day concludes in terms of the formal agenda with the mealtime cluster forks over dinner, which are basically a copy of what happens at lunch. So 8 simultaneous topics, hour and a half, usually hosted by 1 or 2 delegates. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Kathleen. I think, at the end of the day, the colloquiums are sort of the anchoring activity of OC. And for all of the sessions that happen lunch through dinner, it's a chance to engage with delegates on that professional level. And, it's very fluid, as we've talked about. They're all conversations, they're all dialogues, they're all first come, first serve in terms of participation. And, some folks participate in a session every chance they get. Some folks simply go to the colloquium and hang out and chat with folks outside of the other sessions on the agenda. So it really depends on how people navigate OC at the end of the day.
Thank you for that, Topher. And because we are recording this, I want to make sure to capture what's being shared via the chat as well, so that that's recorded for others. Jorian echoed great advice from Diane around lectures are unpopular. The most successful sessions engage participants in discussion to contribute their experience and ask their questions. Jackson provided the advice of allow people to stand if they want to stand, and sit on the ground if they want to sit on the ground, or sit in chairs if they want to sit in chairs. So just really inviting people to be comfortable with however they want to show up physically. Mary also shared her anxiety about running the session without being the sage on the stage. She did ask if there are video links that where we could see how a session was run. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, we've never recorded any of that content at OC. But Mary, you've got an incredible team of other catalysts here, and I'm of course happy to help as well if you'd like to talk with any of us beforehand. And just kind of share some one-on-one, be delighted to do so. Jackson responded that people want flexibility and want to be heard. Be prepared to be the bad cop sometimes and gently cut off those who want to dominate and take all the time from shyer participants. You have all sorts of people, but they all want to be heard. And your goal is to help encourage that. James also shared that the collaborative spirit is very real. Feeling unfamiliar is normal for first-timers, but the community is embracing and incredibly supportive. And then Aisha had 2 questions. One is, would it be discouraged to skip introductions altogether for a cluster fork session? It might be more interesting to dive into conversation, but would love our perspectives. I'm going to stop there and make sure that we have a chance to answer that before sharing this. So for those of you who have done cluster forks before, has anybody tried just totally cutting out introductions altogether, and how did that go?
I think it partly depends on the size of your group. If you've got a really small group, it's great. If you've got a big group, there can be the sense that you get to the end of the cluster fork and all you've heard is the introductions and the rules, the guidelines. I mean, we're in so many sessions that I think getting into the conversation early makes the best use of everybody's energy and time, because we got plenty of time to get to know each other anyway. We're there for a week.
Thank you. That's what I was kind of thinking.
And also, just introductions of names and maybe kind of one interesting fact or something versus platform for everybody to give their stump speech. Could help. The second question from Aisha was, beyond a good conversation, are there other impactful or powerful outcomes that folks have seen come out of the session?
This is Flo, and we had a good session a couple of years ago with people working on sustainable farming practices, and one of the things that came out of that was an ongoing conversation after OC where we had phone conference calls periodically to continue to further the issues that we started in the conversation at OC.
Thank you for sharing, Flo.
Yeah,
Other interesting outcomes?
Jump in there, Avery. I think that's a great point, Flo. I think a lot of these sessions at Opportunity Collaboration Guides are a chance to build partnerships and collaborations in real time. So on one level, a great conversation can be just that, and that's okay. It can be a great conversation. But opportunity collaboration exists to create more effective solutions to poverty. And our theory is that we do that through partnering, through working together. So as hosts of these sessions, I think first goal would be to make sure that everyone's participating, everyone's engaged, it's a lively discussion. But the ultimate outcome from all of these is that we're able to find ways of supporting each other. We're able to find ways to work together to ultimately further one another's goals.
I'm imperative for friendships and other personal relationships to come out of these as well. Topher, can you please speak a bit to the Cluster Forks to Go?
Oh, sure, yeah. So Cluster Forks to Go are a manifestation of the fact that we've got this amazing group of folks from all over the globe looking at solutions to poverty all over the globe. And yet right in our backyard, in this case in the Yucatan Peninsula, there is real poverty. In prior years when we've been in Ixtapa, we've rolled out the same program where delegates can elect, while we're on site, there's an RSVP form that you'll receive in your mailbox as part of your welcome packet, to participate in this Cluster to Go session where you are, in this case this year, taken to a local organic farm that's run by one of our delegates named Enrique Kaufman, who is not only an organic farmer, but also runs something called Green Squids, which is essentially an incubator accelerator for indigenous Mayan social entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. So for the delegates who are able to, who wish to participate in this offsite, they will have lunch on the farm and they will interact with, get to meet local social change agents on the ground in the Yucatan. And via conversations, hopefully build partnerships and collaborations with the local community.
Thank you, Topher. So another question that was raised here was by Monica was, what's the best way to share a clinic and invite people to join? Things may be a little different in Cancun in terms of cell phone reception, Topher. Yes, no? I mean, it's there. It's still, you still have to have a Mexican calling. Okay. Okay. Or if you have T-Mobile, you can text. But generally, it doesn't work. You're not going to be able to really reach people on site and text them and say, hey, please come to my session. So this is where the incredible OC mailboxes come in. So if you've never been before, there are actual physical mailboxes with every delegate's name. The mailbox room actually ends up being a wonderful and lovely place to hang out and run into people. And so one technique is handwritten notes. Or kind of pre-printed cards and dropping those in the box. If you go online, and Topher, I apologize, it was either through Summit Sync or through the actual OC when you registered and logged in as well, but you could see who signed up for your session. Can you clarify that? Yeah, that's a great point. So on Pathable, which is the technology that powers our delegate roster and our agenda online, if you're signed in, you have the opportunity to indicate which sessions you'd like to attend. So as a session host, you can click on your session link and see if there are folks who've indicated, yeah, this is an interesting session. The clarity there is that that's not a formal RSVP system. That doesn't, for those folks who've indicated they want to participate in that session, that's not a guaranteed seat at the table, or so to speak. So it's simply a matter of
those folks be able to indicate that that's something, that's the session they're interested in attending, and for you as hosts to see who the folks who might be attending that session.
And so you could take that list of names and then use that to know who you want to drop a note in the mailbox. Also, just looking at the delegate roster and seeing who's really interested. Another technique is to actually print something out and post it up on the wall in the mailbox as well. That's another technique. But generally, just talking to people about it and getting people excited. Your session is important. Kathleen also asks, what is the balance between keeping to the issues one works on and then going in on tangent or to entirely distinct topics? Does anyone have anything they would like to share regarding that? So I will jump in since no one else has, but I think it is a fine balance, and it really comes back to your purpose for your session. If people really came in the room because they're interested in the topic that you proposed, and folks start going off on or a couple of individuals go off on a very specific tangent, it can be. Oh, sorry, Kathleen, you're clarifying, not for the session. Can you elaborate more then? Oh, for cluster forks. Okay, I think the same rule kind of
for the entire experience. So so I work on cross-border legal issues and migrant globalization. I don't think there's a lot of people that work on that. So I'm just kind of curious if people then kind of go out of their area in cluster forks or go off to see sustainable farming, which there's no direct connection. Of course, there is some connection. Do people do that, or the point really is to really dig in and take every single opportunity you can to deepen your thing? I'm just curious what other delegates, how they approach that. And
I have found it sorry? But yeah, I've definitely found it valuable to broaden and stretch and most importantly do the OC introduction, which is how can I help you? I have found I've learned a ton from other people by just leading with how can I help you? How about others? How have you experienced stretching or not or focusing while at OC as a whole?
This is Victoria again. I can tell a funny story about that. I did a clinic, it was the second OC, so this was very early days, much more lecture style, but answered a lot of questions about the field in which I work in journalism and the way to get social impact messaging out. The event as a whole helped me definitely shape my own direction in my career, and I ended up working for the company that I kept referring people to as being very visionary. I realized through going to OC and talking about the industry so much that was the next place I wanted to work. So for me, I think the value in the last time was getting real clarification in a step back moment, which was definitely career related, and the topic of my work, but made me go in a slightly different direction than what I had come to OC for. So I found that really beneficial.
Thank you for sharing. Others have similar stories or different stories to share?
I think regardless of
Kathleen,
whether people
please jump in, Diane. Sorry.
I think regardless of whether people decide to focus or to broaden is to, that guideline out of open space technology about, the right people are in the room, and it starts when it starts and it ends when it ends. I think what happens, one of the things that's so extraordinary about OC is the opportunity to just see who you end up floating in the ocean by and having this amazing conversation, or end up having a phenomenal walk on the beach. So I think it's as much of being open to what might happen, and being fluid, I think is very helpful. And also knowing that that we can't. My experience is that I can't do it all, because I think what I've experienced year in and year out is just the amazing opportunity to connect with people. So there is so much, and so just to be mindful about that, that you only can do, that we can only do so much, right? In terms of connect with people, and not try to do it all.
Yeah. That's great advice. There is definitely a fear of missing out that happens at OC. So just being present and knowing that wherever you are is the right place is a good reminder. Natalie, we do only have a few minutes left, but I think Natalie raises a really important question, which is, what is that fine line of promoting your work and trying to attract funding versus serving the community? And the one piece of advice I would lead with is really try to put yourself in a place of empathy. You know, if you are a funder and attending an event, how would you want to be engaged in conversation? Because in all likelihood, being pitched all the time is going to be really, really draining and not be the experience that you want to have. So I think, once again, leading with how can I help you sets the right tone and ensures that you're engaging someone as an equal and as a partner. And it's not to dismiss that people do need to raise money for their ventures. It's just whether or not it's the tactics you use and the values you use when you enter into that conversation. I'd really like to open this up for others who either are on the funding side and have had that experience, or entrepreneurs who've tried to raise capital as well. Like, what has been your experience and what's worked for you?
Hi, this is Amy calling from San Francisco. This as a guide this year, this has come up in a number of our calls, and as a new delegate last year, and someone who was looking at potentially seeking funding, this also came up for me too. And I always tell people that the difference between kind of like the pushy PR approach or and sharing is the relationship. And so I just encourage people to go for the relationship and then see what can arise out of that. And whatever arises may come out, months or even years down the line, but it has to start with the relationship. I've seen very few people, actually I only know of one person who has walked out of OC with a check in hand, and that was because he had an existing relationship with that funder beforehand.
This is Monica. I just want to also kind of riff on that. Well, I would just say, there's no sales pitch that can trump authenticity and just showing up fully as yourself. And I think that's one place that I found opportunity collaboration is really an open space where everybody can show up, and then things come together.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Ron. I'd agree. We came under the radar the first year, and the experience was much different than the second year when we were listed as funders. And it's all about the relationship. All the funding we've done has been people we've met, talked to, and enjoyed spending time with. There's an immense number of passionate folks there. And that's the relationship that sets them apart when we get involved as a funder.
Sorry, if you have the music going in the background, we'd appreciate it if you could go on mute. And thank you for sharing that. Esther, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I wanted to say there is that as it comes back to the sessions here, in terms of how these conversations go, the last thing we want to see as conveners of this is that the sessions become the pitch session. That, the entrepreneur and nonprofit leader sort of holding court and trying to convince everyone that their solution is worthy of support over others. So I really appreciate what everyone has said about the funder-fundee dynamic, and I just wanted to sort of emphasize within the context of the sessions that the sessions are the time where you support each other.
Thank you for sharing that, and also keep in mind your guides are excellent resources, and we recommend continuing to reach out to them if you have additional questions. It is 1 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everyone's schedules. You've already gotten a few notifications that people need to sign off. As always, I'll be on the site, happy to talk with folks if you like, and look to each other as resources as well. And we'll be sharing out the videos from this call, as well as the resources. So if Monica, if you want to share that with Topher, then we can make sure to include that in the video. Thank you all so much for your time today, and really excited to see what you all bring.
Thank you, Avery.
Thank you, Avery. I'm looking forward to meeting everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Avery.
Thank you. Thanks, Topher.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.